Hey friends, welcome back for another video. I am super excited for this one because this week we are on vacation at the beach. So I thought it would be fun to see how many books I can read while we're on vacation. So let me give you a quick rundown of what I brought with me and then we'll get right into it. So I brought my Kindle, of course. I did get a new case. It's super cute. And this one actually has a stand and a little band for you to hold it, so that's really nice. I'm really glad that I upgraded to this one because I read a lot where I prop it up on the table, so I won't have to lean that on my water bottle anymore. And then I brought a nice stack of books with me. So I've got First Time Caller by B.K. Borson. I have Daisy Hates, which I actually had started a while ago. I'm on chapter 3. I started and I just wasn't vibing with Daisy as much as I liked Magnolia Park, so I'm wanting to get back into that and hopefully finish it this week. I also picked up It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan, and I've never read anything by this author, but I know that she is a favorite among a lot of people on BookTube and Book Talk, so I really wanted to pick up one of her books. I figured it would be a perfect read for the beach, so I've got that one and I'm excited to try it out and see if I like this author. And then something a little different, I just made a quick little barge trip before we came out to the beach and I picked up The Turtle House by Amanda Churchill, and this was on the buy one get one 50% off special, but I read the synopsis and it just sounded really interesting, so I figured I would bring that one, and it's a smaller book, so I wanted to have some kind of quick page turners while we were here. And then the last book that I brought with me is one that I did not get to in my reading new releases video, but I knew that I wanted to read it this week. So this is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez, and it doesn't have the dust jacket on because I wanted to save that and make sure it stayed nice and new, but I did bring this one with me and I'm definitely going to read it this week. So that's what I've got available to choose from, and I'm not sure yet what I want to jump in with, but once I know and I've picked up my first book, I will check back in with you. We are about to head to the beach, so I just wanted to pop in with a super quick update because I finished It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan last night. This was my first Annabelle Monaghan, like I mentioned before, and I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it was a super quick read, and she has a little bit of a different pacing and style compared to some other romance authors that I've read, so I really enjoyed this. Right now I'm sitting around like a 4-star, but I haven't settled on whether that's like a 3.75 or if it's a little bit over 4 stars or if it's a true 4-star, but I would say overall that I really enjoyed this. And this morning I went ahead and started Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I don't have the dust jacket on just because I wanted to leave that at home to protect it, but already from the first chapter I can tell that I'm going to be interested in these characters, so I'm really excited to keep reading, and hopefully I won't be crying out on the beach reading this, but we will see, and I will update you later. Super duper quick update. So I did finish Say You'll Remember Me, and I think I want to take some time to just collect my thoughts on it a little bit. I think Overall, I liked the book, but I just felt like it needed more. It wrapped up really quickly, so I haven't landed on a rating for that yet, but I will make sure that I update that by the end of the video with my final thoughts. And now that I've finished Say You'll Remember Me, I'm going to be reading Crooked House by Agatha Christie because we are kind of coming towards the end of our trip, and this is a short little mystery novel, and I've been wanting to get into reading some more Agatha Christie, so I know I didn't mention that I had this at the beginning of the video, and that's because we went to a secondhand bookstore that's in the area and I picked up a few things. They were all $2 a piece, so I'll give you a little haul of that later, but this is what I'm going to be reading. I also started an audiobook on Libby because they had The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda available as a skip the line copy, so I am also going to be listening to that on audiobook, and those will probably be my last two for the week. But that being said, I will update you once I'm done with one or both of these. Back home from vacation, so we do have a little change of scenery for my final recap, but I did finish the last two books that I started reading before the end of the trip, and those were Crooked House by Agatha Christie and The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda. So let's start with The Only Survivors because I did finish my audiobook before I finished my physical copy of my Agatha Christie book. So fortunately, I knew that I had The Only Survivors on my physical TBR when I saw the Skip the Line copy of this available on Libby. So I was really excited to read this as an audiobook. One, because it was a full cast audiobook, which I always enjoy just a little bit more than when it's just one narrator voicing all the characters. And two, because I knew that this was going to give me an opportunity to get another book off of my physical TBR for the summer. So I will give just a little spoiler alert that these two books ended up being the highest and lowest rated books in my reading for my time at the beach. So we'll discuss that in a minute. If you want to take a guess on which was which, you can go ahead and do that now. Okay, let's see if you're right. So, The Only Survivors I thought was pretty interesting. It wasn't the most thrilling thriller I've ever read, and I will say that I am somebody who has spent a lot of time in the Outer Banks and visited the Outer Banks a lot, and maybe it was just the description and how much I was retaining of the description while listening to the audiobook. I do my best to give my audiobooks my full attention when I'm listening to them, and I felt like I was paying a lot of attention to this one, but there's always a chance that I miss something. But the characters in this book are brought together because they're involved in a tragic accident when they're in school. And in that accident, 12 of their classmates are killed, and there are only 9 of them that have survived following the crash. So 2 of their teachers and then 10 other students pass away. And so that happens kind of in East Tennessee, which is where I currently live, or at least while they're on their way to East Tennessee. They're supposedly from a school in North Carolina. I don't think the book specified whereabout in North Carolina, but I could probably take a guess depending on like how far they said they traveled to get into East Tennessee. So I would say that the part about East Tennessee didn't necessarily ring as super untrue or far-fetched. Like, I think the landscape that they're describing is pretty familiar as being part of this region, and especially part of the Appalachian Mountains. So that part of the book felt pretty accurate and true to a potential emergency that could happen. That being said, when they were describing the Outer Banks and where they were staying in the Outer Banks, initially, to me, it sounded like they were staying in like Corolla, down by the 4x4 beach, which if you've never been to the Outer Banks, maybe this means nothing to you. But to me, it sounded like the house they were staying in was in Corolla, definitely like beach access only. You need a 4x4 to get to your house, especially with how they were talking about how difficult it was to get groceries and to get to other places. But then they were talking about stuff being within walking distance, like restaurants and stuff being within walking distance to the house, which wouldn't necessarily be true for that area. They were also talking about a campground being walking distance, which again, wouldn't necessarily be true for that area. And they were talking about spending some time on the sound side. So that to me then made it sound like maybe they were in the Rodanthe area, but overall, just kind of the inconsistencies with the way they were describing that setting kind of threw me off a little bit, just because I have visited the Outer Banks pretty much every year over the summer growing up, so I just felt a little bit thrown off, not exactly being able to put my finger on the area that they were describing, which obviously a lot of this is fictional, but I think if the author had just given a highly specific area, it would have made it a little more concrete for me and a little bit more believable. That kind of took me out of the story a little bit. That being said, I didn't feel like I necessarily was 100% bought into the fear that some of the characters were feeling and some of the feelings that they were having towards the other characters that had survived with them. There's a mystery throughout. Well, there's actually a couple of mysteries throughout. So the main mystery being what exactly caused the accident to occur, and also what did these students do when they were teenagers, because there's some hint throughout the book that maybe they had an option to try to save the other individuals who were out there and they didn't. And so since the time that they were in the accident, a couple more of the individuals that had originally survived the accident have passed away in different ways. So that's also part of the story, is the fact that our characters now feel terrorized. They feel like this thing is following them and that they may be next, even though there's not like an actual thing. It's just like the guilt of what had happened and the fact that they survived versus the people who didn't survive. And I felt like that was a little bit shallow, just because it all really hinged on the teenagers choosing to lie about some things that happened that I don't necessarily think anyone would have faulted them for at the time of the accident. I was surprised with the twist that came about when it was brought to light why the accident occurred. I think that was kind of the most shocking part of the whole book and helped to explain a lot of our main characters' feelings and motivations. But other than that, I didn't find anything else too shocking throughout the book. I kind of suspected a couple things that were supposed to be major twists. So overall, I thought this was enjoyable, and I personally would recommend the audiobook if you're wanting a quick thriller to listen to. I think the audiobook is about 10 hours, so if you're like me and you listen on 2 times speed or faster, it's not going to take you very long to listen to this one. But I definitely enjoyed the fact that it was a full cast. I did think that that made me a little bit more integrated into the story, and I did enjoy that. But there were just a few things about this that kind of took me out of the story or made it less suspenseful for me or believable. So for that reason, I did rate this 3.25 stars. So on Goodread, that'll be a 3-star, which doesn't mean that the book is bad. I just don't think it was super thrilling for me. It didn't really keep me on the edge of my seat, and I was kind of hoping for that like beach murder mystery, keep me on the edge of my seat feeling, and it just didn't give me that. But that being said, I will definitely pick up more books from Megan Miranda, because I do think that I enjoy her writing and she has some good concepts, and I would like to see if maybe her execution continues to improve in future books. So now that you know I rated The Only Survivors 3.25 stars, you can probably guess that Crooked House is my highest rated book for this video. And like I mentioned before, this is super short. It's only about 230 pages, and this is one of Agatha Christie's standalone mysteries, at least as far as I'm aware. This one's not integrated into any of her other series. None of these characters repeat in her other series, and this was my first Agatha Christie, so I really felt like one of her standalone mysteries was going to be a great place for me to get started. And like I mentioned, I got it for $2 at that really cool bookstore that I found while we were at the beach. So this was honestly perfect for me to pick up and read, and I really, really enjoyed this. I think Agatha Christie's execution on writing a mystery that is so interesting and really keeps you guessing in 230 pages is just exquisite. I mean, she really is a master of the craft. There's a reason that she is such a well-revered author. And so I really, really enjoyed this, and I ended up rating it 4.5 stars. I don't want to say too much about this book, even though, like, obviously this book has been out for a long time, but I don't want to potentially give any spoilers about where the story goes, but you should just know it's a very traditional detective mystery. Our main character is not a detective, but he's closely related both to the party that's involved in the murder as well as the detectives that are investigating the murder. And I felt like that gave his character a really interesting perspective while he tried to navigate his feelings and also try to be unbiased and learn what had happened and who had perpetrated the murder. So overall, I really, really enjoyed this, and this only made me more excited to get into more Agatha Christie and to read some of her series. I really, really want to read Miss Marple, so I think I'm going to try to get into some of her series really soon. I think you're going to see a lot more Agatha Christie on the rest of my reading wrap up for the year, so very glad that I picked this up at the beach and that I was able to enjoy it so much. Now, that being said, when I mentioned this book, I did also promise to share the other books that I picked up at this store with you. So let's do a quick little haul of the other books that I picked up. So the first book that I found when I was browsing was Untamed, and this was a Reese's Book Club pick, and personally I have not been let down too much by any of the Reese's Book Club pick books that I have picked up over time. And when I read the synopsis for this book, I thought it sounded really good, and I definitely wanted to have it in my library to read. I will say I was a little sad. These are used books, and somebody wrote a really nice birthday message to a friend in this book, and then this individual donated the book, and that's why it was for sale at the store, so that made me really sad, but I thought it was really sweet that someone had gifted this, and I don't think I personally could ever give away a book that someone had gifted me, so I feel good giving this book a new home and giving it some love and giving it a read. Now, the next book I got was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I have been looking out for a copy of this book. We recently went to another thrift bookstore or used bookstore nearby where we live now, and we didn't happen to find any gems, so I was really excited to find this and get a copy of it just for $2. So I'm really excited to have that on my shelves. Now, I do feel like I have to justify the last 2 books that I picked up a little bit, just because they might be a little cringe, but these books are part of a series that I really loved growing up, and it seems that my mom has misplaced my original copies, so I am on the hunt to get new copies of these books. And originally I just had those first 3 books picked out, but I didn't have enough cash for them, and there was a minimum $10 to be able to use a card, so I had to pick up 2 more books to meet the $10 minimum. And I had happened to notice that they had hardcover copies of Eclipse and Breaking Dawn from the Twilight series. So Twilight is one of those things that I absolutely love to hate, hate to love. It's so cringy, but I feel like it's finally gotten to a point where it's so bad that it's iconic. I love those movies so much. I quote them all the time. And so knowing how much I love these books growing up as a teenager, I really want to get a new copy of the series so that I can reread them from the beginning and see how I feel about them now that I'm older, since it's been a very long time since I read these books. So those were the last 2 books that I picked up from the little thrift bookstore, and honestly, I'm really happy to have them. I had been holding out on picking them up because I didn't want to have the set broken up, so I wanted to make sure that I was getting the same hardcovers and the same size, but I've been having a hard time finding Twilight in this size and hardcover, so I figured I would go ahead and buy these, finish out my set with this size, and then hopefully just be on the lookout for Twilight, and I'm sure eventually it will turn up in the same exact size. So that's my plan, and that's why I went ahead and picked these up. So with that being said, I just want to do a final recap of the 4 books that I got through while I was at the beach. So I started with Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. Actually, I think that's a lie. I started with It's a Love Story by Annabelle Monaghan, and this was my first Annabelle Monaghan read, and I really enjoyed it. I did end up rating this 4 stars, and I feel pretty settled on that. I can't decide if it's a little bit generous or if it's not quite enough, because I did really enjoy reading this, and I really, really enjoyed our FMC in this book and the romance that was described, so I don't know, I'll think about it, but I definitely will be reading some more Annabelle Monaghan, and I may have ordered another one of her books, so we'll see if I get to reading a little bit more of her before the summer is over. I would really like to, because I did enjoy this. So overall, that one got a 4 star. Then after that, I read Say You'll Remember Me, because I guess I wanted my feelings hurt, and I really enjoyed this. Unfortunately, this was one of those books where I was getting down to the last like 50 pages, and I thought, there's no way that this could have a satisfying ending for me if it wraps up in the next 50 pages, and that includes the epilogue. And unfortunately, I just felt like this did need about 100 to 150 more pages for me to feel fully satisfied with the book. Now, that being said, I really enjoyed this romance. I thought it was a much more realistic love story than we've seen from some other authors in contemporary romance, and I really felt like Abby Jimenez did a really good job of portraying the difficulties that can come with life, whether that's due to family struggles, dealing with a loved one having a medical diagnosis and feeling helpless to do anything about that, or just trying to date the person that means the world to you despite all other circumstances really fighting against you. So honestly, I thought this book overall was really beautiful. I think it was really giving. If he wanted to, he would, but that might not always be realistic for real people. But I was glad, and I really enjoyed reading how it turned out in this book, and I really thought the romance was sweet, and I was happy with the end of the book. I thought it wrapped up really nicely. There was one part of this that I absolutely did not see coming that really hurt my feelings and made me very sad, and I'm not gonna spoil it, but it just definitely was unexpected. Given everything else going on, I just didn't see it coming, even though it should be something that, like, obviously could happen. I just didn't think Abby was gonna do us like that, and then she did, so that part of the book made me really sad, but overall I felt that this was really well done. I just wish it was longer, which is always a shame when you find yourself wishing that you had 100 to 150 more pages to read of a book, and it's just not there, and there's nothing you can do about that. So I did end up giving this a 4 star. Again, I'm not sure if that's a little generous or not generous enough. I don't know. I really enjoyed this, but I'm just feeling very kind of middle of the road on that 4 star. So I definitely don't think it's below a 4 star. I'm just not sure if I feel like it should be above a 4 star. So that's where I'm sitting at for right now, but I'm sure I'll reassess all my ratings at the end of the year, and I'll probably be mad at myself that I didn't rate it 4.5 or 4.25. So that's where that fell for me, and I definitely would recommend reading this, especially if you're into contemporary fiction or more, again, women's fiction. So very similar to my feelings about Emily Henry's new book. I think this kind of fell in the same wavelength for me, and personally I like that type of writing, so I really like that Abby Jimenez normally writes a really beautiful love story, but there's also a lot of elements of real life that come into play. So I think if you're into that, you'll really like this book, but I would be interested to know if you feel the same way and feel like it just needed a little something more at the end. And then of course we just talked about The Only Survivors and Crooked House, which were 3.25 stars and 4.5 stars. So overall, a really, really good reading week at the beach. I honestly thought I might get at least one more book read, but we just ended up being really busy. We were out shopping, and we had a day where it was raining, so not really conducive to sitting on the beach and reading. But I'm not mad at reading 4 books in 1 week, especially coming off of the reading slump that I have been in. So overall, I think it was a really, really successful week, and I finally feel like the summer has officially started. So I'm looking forward to reading a lot more summery books over the next couple months. And with all of that being said, I am going to wrap up my How Much Can I Read in a Week on Vacation vlog here. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!